The air in the university conference room was thick and dry, carrying whispers and the dozy huff of an afternoon fan. 7 people sat before me, the faculty review committee, all their faces half lost behind files and sheets stamped Kenyatta University. I was 18, ridiculous and too hopeful, clutching my portfolio with sweating hands. Professor Njogu, always the first to speak, furrowed his brow. Mr. Obanio, he began, his finger tapping my application, your proposed final year project is, he smiled, that polite, chiding smile only slightly dampened by weariness, unique. I have not seen sound design presented this way before, as a, what do you call it? Immersive audio journey, I croaked. Yes, Njogu said, nodding, but is this really what you want, engineering in sound? Nairobi has so many practical needs, machines to fix, roads to design. One of the younger lecturers, I think her name was Damaris, tried to hide her sigh, but I heard it sharp and clean. We all love music, she chipped in. But this sounds, she winked at a grey-haired man beside her as if handing him a joke, to our ears half finished. I nodded, swallowing hard, remembering my rehearsal for this defense. I want to show how soundscapes, layered audio, can heal, can tell stories in new ways. There are no limits with sound. We are, after all, in Kenya, Njogu said. We do not record Hollywood films here. Is this not a fantasy, this career? The others shuffled, murmured, bored. I could feel my face burning. When I finally stood to leave, I nodded to everyone, lips numb. My rejection came 2 days later, emailed in blocky black type. Application not recommended, unrealistic career aspirations. The shame that followed clung close. Sometimes I think it had a weight, sharp, volcanic, concentrated behind my eyes. Home in Langata, my father's voice boomed off the cleared courtyard as soon as he saw my face. I tried to hide the news, but mothers see these things. You failed the course, Mama asked, voice even. They think my work is childish, I muttered. I hated how small my voice sounded. Papa waved his hand grandly. I told you, sound designer, who in Kenya does that? You make radio commercials, you become a star. Ari, you should have done civil engineering like your cousin Njoroge. Cousin Njoroge, who wore his hard hat to every family lunch, sat with both elbows on the plastic table, slurping stew, sneaking glances. Auntie Joyce tapped her fork, proud that her son could build bridges and fill out tax returns. The open secret at every gathering became that I was unserious, living in a dream. My siblings Ruth and Eliad took care not to mock me directly. Instead, Ruth asked, "What was your backup plan?" and Eliad recounted his own successes in logistics, loud and cheery. Other relatives would arrive, sometimes from upcountry, and after pans of ugali and goat ribs, they'd corner me, voices dropping. But what is the job after all? You just sit with machines. Record weddings, the laughter came in streams, aimed at a cousin, a neighbor, but always circling me. I tried not to let it show, but the shame dug deep. My once bright dream dulled, shoved in a box I peered into only when alone at night. Work became the mechanics of survival. I took a job at a neighborhood cyber café in South B, fixing printers, untangling wires, listening to tinny pop from old desktops through my cheap headphones during breaks. Sometimes I'd wander Ngong Road with a recorder in my pocket, collecting sounds, roadside song, bicycle bells, the clap of muddy shoes against the curb. For years I stayed in motion so I wouldn't stall. I watched friends scatter to finance to NGOs. Each message on WhatsApp was another marker. Got a job with Safaricom, just relocated to Germany. But a stubborn spark, call it courage, call it defiance, survived. I spent evenings online, learning from YouTube Reddit threads where professionals from faraway lands spoke of Foley, layered ambisonics, psychoacoustic space. It sounded so cinematic, so far from Nairobi, where buses sputtered in the dusk and music bled from every open window. But on that side of the screen, no one laughed at me. It became a ritual. The noise of my father's rebukes, community snickers, all faded while I shut myself in, piecing together imaginary worlds with cheap headphones. I made sound collages, the crackling rise of thunderstorm over Gicomba, the layered harmonies of Sunday choirs, the bray of donkeys, the low hum of city night. Sometimes I'd post them anonymously online. One night in May of my 23rd year, an Australian podcaster emailed me about a soundscape I'd posted, a rainfall journey tracking a storm from Kawangwea slum to Karen's leafy walls. Incredible, evocative, she wrote. How did you do it? Would you be willing to make some custom pieces? I worked 2 extra shifts at the cyber so I could afford a new microphone, and I borrowed my boss's old laptop every weekend. I poured every ache, every longing into those audio pieces, vivid, panoramic, true to Nairobi's soul. Rachel, the podcaster, paid me in tiny increments, but my heart soared. For the first time, someone believed. For the first time, I could buy my own dinner. Word of mouth jumped oceans. A short film from South Africa needed a sound designer. Then a Berlin-based meditation app wanted East African soundscapes. My nights blurred into one another, but when I listened back to my work, a market growing busy, a train steaming through the rainy dusk, I felt something close to joy. I began to call it pride. It took me another 3 years before I could send rent home instead of borrowing it. The turning point came in the third year after I landed a retainer with a film studio in Montreal, a job pitched by a Kenyan director who stubbornly believed that Nairobi's sound stories deserved the world's ear. She was brash and wild and trusted me with her whole feature. I moved into a place of my own. It was just a room near Donholm, close enough to feel the heartbeat of downtown but removed from the scrutiny of family. I still saw my parents twice a month bearing groceries, but I sidestepped all mention of work. My siblings lived their own fast lives, circling on the periphery. One Sunday, cousin Njoroge approached me at a family function between prayers and the start of lunch. "So Omosh, he asked, drawing out the A as if to trap me. "What do you do now exactly?" "I make sound for films and apps," I said. He grinned. "So you finally sell ringtones," I said as much to Baba. "Maybe now you can buy us rounds in town, eh?" Laughter rolled around the table. Something in me shuddered, a flame of old shame compounded by the weight of bruised pride. But instead of snapping, I told myself to wait. Time would speak for me. The following year, in my late 20s, that time finally arrived. The Montreal feature Tides of Dust won an award at Cannes. My name blazed under sound design in the crawling credits. CNN Africa did a short segment on African voices breaking through, and they called my phone, asking if I could narrate a piece about my process, about why the sounds of Nairobi mattered. Suddenly, people I'd never met on my side of town stopped me in shops and at bus stops. "You are the guy, the one who records matatu touts, that was you on TV." WhatsApp exploded. Family groups I never posted in were full of links, photos, forwarded pride. My father, silent through previous years, called. "Can you come home this weekend?" he said. "There is something." Traffic on Mombasa Road was sticky and thick, horns blaring, the sky threatening rain as I made my way back. Our old gate was slightly rusted, paint flaking. Inside, Mama had set out sweet chai and arrowroot just like years before. Ruth and Eliad grinned, crowding the small family room, and Papa stood with his arms crossed, chin high. There were more people than usual: Auntie Joyce, some church elders, a sprinkling of curious neighbors. I realized quickly that word had spread. The concrete proof. On a low table sat a new flat-screen television borrowed from a neighbor, turned to KTN for the repeat airing of my CNN piece. Everyone waited, spoons clinked. Ruth kept glancing at me, half gleeful, half stunned. The show began, my voice narrating. Nairobi is a city of 1,000 textures of quiet heartbreak and sudden startling joy. The family room was dense with silence as they watched the visuals. The matatu horns, sandals slapping, the echoing call to prayer, the fast footfall of children playing after the rain, all stitched together by sounds I'd spent years recording and weaving. They heard laughter, the lyrical play of Kiswahili curses, the sizzle of frying fish, and organ music rising on Sunday morning. They saw me at a battered desk, hunched over headphones, replaying seconds of bird call, adjusting levels on a cracked laptop. When my name, Emmanuel Obanio, flared up beside sound designer, there was a ripple, a hush that was both shock and pride. I could feel their gazes curling toward me. Auntie Joyce leaned in, eyes big. "That was your work. All those sounds." "Yes." "Even those films in Europe?" "Yes." My father coughed, then brought his hands together. "You know, this boy, from long time we say he is stubborn. But now he has brought Nairobi to the world." The elders nodded, thoughtful. Church friends began muttering how they always knew there was something special in him. Even Njoroge looked abashed, scratching the side of his face. Mama smiled gently, and I saw that her eyes were a bit wet. She squeezed my hand beneath the table. "We are proud," she whispered. Something in me relented then, a hard knot dissolving. I had waited years for this, a room full of skeptics, now confronted with evidence that my odd, ridiculous dream had built something real. But in that moment, what mattered most was not their surprise or the vindication on their faces, but the way my shame became weightless. In the days that followed, curious visitors trickled by. Some came with shy questions, others with recordings, a grandfather's prayer, a poem, a song their daughter hummed while washing clothes. They wanted to know how sound could preserve what mattered to them. I began to teach workshops on weekends. Students arrived, nervous and wide-eyed, some carrying battered phones, others hand-built gadgets. We made field trips, recording the city, chasing wind and rain, tuning our ears to the things no one else noticed. Each gathering became a small chorus, a declaration that dreams which begin as jokes can become lifelines. Nairobi changed for me. Where I had once found only reminders of what I was not, I now found celebration in every alley. A mechanic who used my soundscapes as meditation at night, a taxi driver who played my matatu mixes in the mornings. I was stopped on the street not as an oddity but as a craftsman, someone who taught the city how to listen to itself. Yet every victory felt less like a conquest, more like a return. My parents invited me back home to eat chapati and tell stories to my nieces and nephews, making them giggle as I layered their laughter against the city night. My father still sometimes asked, "Is there not a way you could make the government hear your work?" But now it was only half a joke. When I walked through the old campus at Kenyatta University one day, faculty and students milled about in the warm haze of afternoon, papers fluttering, voices rising. I heard my own work leaking from a lecture hall, an audio journey I'd given the university months before, now played as teaching material. Professor Njogu saw me at the gate. He was older now, slower, but he remembered. "Mr. Obanio," he called, holding out his hand, "you made quite a road, eh? I hope the students here listen as well as you did." Shame did not follow me out of the university gates that day. What followed instead was the real sound of Nairobi, old, new and beautiful, everywhere I went.